shall we get started? Awesome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dizzion's webinar, Decoding the EUC Hexagrid. As you guys may have known, we've been working really hard with the team to put together some deep dives into that space. So we can go ahead and go and now do a deep dive on this white paper.
Agenda is pretty simple. Quick introduction, introduce myself and Mary. Ladies first, so start with Mary. But also like, what is EUC? What's the EUC Hexagrid? And then a deep dive on it. Why the EUC Hexagrid? And then we'll go into the decoding mode. The themes, the pillars, the sub-pillars, the vendors, like what's happening in that particular space, but also like what's new. What is like latest developments in the 6 pillars. So that's sort of the main. Like, number 4 is I would say the main topic here. Hey Mary, maybe you want to introduce yourself quickly. Are you all
Yeah,
good?
I'll go first. All good. The dog has been put away. So I'm Mary Graham. I'm the demand gen marketing manager here at Dizzion. Pretty much work with our engineering team, Ruben, and everybody to put together content for the team. And then we do have with us Ruben, our field CTO for Dizzion. He's well renowned in the EUC space. Been an MVP with NVIDIA, worked with Citrix, all in parts of all sorts of community advisory boards. But Ruben, you can spill more about yourself. This is the time to shine.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, indeed. I'm based in Netherlands, on the other side compared to Mary of the ocean. Active in the end user computing space for a while, probably 2 decades. Indeed, Microsoft, Citrix, VMware, NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, on-prem, public cloud. Background is consulting. Background is technology. So feet on the ground, know how stuff works, or at least if I don't know, try to investigate and get a better understanding how things work. But yeah, an end user computing geek. I'm passionate about end user computing. Yeah, helping customers and colleagues in the field to make the right choices with regards to EUC, and also explain what Dizzion and Frame can do, and also what Dizzion and Frame cannot do. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Suffice to say, Ruben's been around the block. So
Yeah,
glad to have him here to help with discussing everything about
some
EUC.
gray hairs left and right, but all good.
You should be
Alrighty.
proud of gray hairs.
Yeah, I'm proud of that. I don't have any issues with that. Hey, I'm
Same.
part of the Dizzion team, as Mary is as well, and we revolutionize like end user computing and specifically desktop as a service, and really making desktop as a service truly simple. Frame is a technology part of Dizzion. Dizzion is sort of the company, and we merged with Dizzion last year. And yeah, Dizzion, you could say, is the engine to make desktop as a service really work. But this webinar is not about Dizzion per se. It's about, hey, what is happening in the end user computing landscape? What are the developments? What are the vendors? That's sort of the main theme for this webinar. Anyway, to introduce the Dizzion EUC Hexagrid, or the EUC Hexagrid. Yes, we as Dizzion developed that Hexagrid. It was a sort of a topic which I had in mind for many years. My background is consulting, and I always try to explain it. I try to keep things simple and explain it by telling stories, or to explain things by creating pictures like this one here. So yes, it's the Dizzion's EUC Hexagrid, but we did really our best to make it sort of universal. This storyline and the developments and the pillars also apply to other sort of vendors who maybe compete with Dizzion. This is sort of universal. This should help anyone in the EUC space to understand better what EUC is, to understand better what the core sort of components are, understand what the main vendors are, and also understand, hey, what are the developments? So yes, it is built and maintained by Dizzion, but it is universal. And I know for sure many fellow colleagues, competitors, consultants also are using this EUC Hexagrid. I already see that in the field, and that's sort of the angle as well, to make the world a better place in the context of EUC and explain what is happening in our space. And there's a lot of things happening in our space, and many things are for good. So that's something, yeah, where we would love to contribute on as well.
I think something that's interesting about EUC is the fact that, like, yes, we were able to build this grid, but how much they have overlap or crossover, where we work in DAS, but you think about all the different programs and companies and softwares that we work with. So
Yep.
it's it's a universal tool for all is what
Exactly.
the
And
goal
that was like
is.
the goal. Huh? We both worked hard on building this tool, this infographic. Some people asked, "Hey, how much time did you spend on it?" And then I'm joking. Well, I would say 20 seconds, 30 seconds, just a fancy prompt in a Gen AI tool, and this Hexagrid was born. But the reality is not that at all. It is like, I would say, weeks and weeks of work for just creating the Hexagrid, but also like understanding this space is like years and years of work. That's what I do for job and for fun. So that with that knowledge and translate that knowledge into the Hexagrid, like the infographic, but also the white paper is a lot of work. But again, happy to share. And many people think also, hey, the Hexagrid is the infographic. There are two versions, like a colored version and the sort of white background version, which is true. That is EUC Hexagrid, but there's also I would say a white paper which explains the Hexagrid and explains the developments in more high level. And both can be used, or both are being used in the field to showcase what is EUC. I know customers, small and large, and prospects, small and large, who are using the EUC Hexagrid to explain, hey, this is what the whole picture of end user computing looks like. And we as a company, we are using this tool or this product in this segment, and this product and this tool another segment. So it is helpful also internally for customers. That's what I've seen, to explain, hey, what is EUC? Why are we doing certain things? Why do we have certain tools? What are these tools solving? What kind of functions and features are being provided by these vendors and the tools they represent? So why this particular picture? Because with the two QR codes, you have a direct link to the white paper, and of course also a direct link to both infographics. And these infographics are like high resolution, so you can download it and print it. I know others will and have printed the Hexagrid on like poster format and put it on the wall as well. So whatever feels comfortable for you, it's here to be. Alrighty. So there are, I would say, key pillars. The EUC Hexagrid, it all starts with, in the middle, end user computing. And for many people, end user computing equals virtual desktop infrastructure, or equals desktop as a service, or equals desktop virtualization. And that is not correct, or in my personal view is not accurate. EUC is the whole spectrum of tools to get work done. And that could include VDI or desktop as a service, desktop virtualization, but also could be sort of out of scope and just maybe complete something else. That's what like the core is of EUC, getting work done. And then you see in the middle EUC, but then you have like EUC key pillars like mobility and collaboration and security and sustainability and flexibility and user experience. And these are the elements which I use in explaining what EUC is. For instance, EUC is well attached to user experience. And user experience is all about how an end user feels when they are using applications, systems, or services. So it's not only about making things look like it's like how it's being used, but it's like it needs to be like smooth and intuitive. So that's just one example of user experience. And then you have mobility. And mobility in the context of end user computing means the ability to access apps and information from any device, anywhere, anytime. So these are just two examples. I will not explain all six, but these are also written down in the white paper and will help me and hopefully you as well to explain, hey, okay, now I understand EUC a little bit better. EUC is a much broader sort of umbrella term with like 6 key pillars that explains the value of end user computing: mobility, collaboration, UX, flexibility, sustainability, and security. So why end user computing matters? It's all about getting work done. So user productivity equals getting work done is what I would say. But also support organizations to stay creative and agile, using tools and solutions to get work done. Sometimes also in new ways. And a little bit later in the event, I will share in in video. I will not spoil the beans yet, but I will share a video which we created using tools in a brand new way. And I'll explain a little bit later how that looks like. But yeah, stay tuned for that. But also end user computing is keeping companies secure by using, for instance, modern management or modern identities and modern applications in all variety of devices, which can be physical in all kinds of screen sizes, including like spatial computing, but also virtual. And virtual, with that, I mean virtual apps and virtual desktops. So EUC, why EUC matters? Well, you can see it here as well. Get work done, tools to get work done, support organizations to stay creative and agile, and keeping companies secure, and using modern tools to get work done, but also to manage it in a more streamlined fashion as well. So people ask, hey, why is cloud and infrastructure not sort of listed in this Hexagrid? Yeah, that's a valid question, because EUC Hexagrid is, I would say, one view of the IT space. There are other views as well, and maybe somewhere in time we will create another type of Hexagrid, maybe like public cloud services Hexagrid as an example, or a modern data center Hexagrid, another example. So right now, this Hexagrid is focused on end user computing. Hence, infrastructure to run end user computing is not in this Hexagrid, because the main focus is sort of end user computing, and not like the backend services on-prem or in cloud or cloud services to support end user computing. That's where we differentiate between like the EUC Hexagrid and others. So the EUC Hexagrid, so let me just zoom in a little bit. Again, in the middle, you see end user computing, as I explained. Then you see, zoom out a little bit, you see like the 6 pillars, like UX, flexibility, sustainability, security, as you can see here. But you can also see that, hey, there are sort of colored themes like access and device and OS management and security and virtual applications and desktops and collaboration and applications and application management. These are, like, would say, the pillars to connect with vendors, with tools. And then you can see, for instance, on this side here, the sort of sub-pillars, which combined create the virtual desktop and application side. Or the sub-pillars here, unified communications and collaboration, cloud storage, application and peripherals, which combine to this blue one here. And access, if you go here, with secure local browser, unified workspace, spatial computing, think client hardware, client OS, PC, and mobile hardware. Sometimes I wish Mary gave me the freedom to add more text to it. But she's already nodding like, no, not the case here. So it's like always a thin line. How much text can you fit into this infographic, and sort of what is required? Like the secure browser, I should say secure enterprise local browser would be my sort of geek, what I would say. But yeah, that is too long to fit into this Hexagrid. So sometimes you need to make concessions and say, okay, it is what it is, and then we'll use the white paper to explain a little bit more what is all about.
Do we have a billboard or do we have a computer screen? That's the question.
Yeah, exactly.
We want to include everybody and everything.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Like you said, we'll make more in the future.
And also from a vendor perspective, this is not I would say, the complete EUC world. For sure, there will be vendors which I'm not aware of. So if you're one of them, or if you know one of them, or you say, hey, this is missing, feel free to reach out. Happy to add them into the database, because that's like the source of like all the data here. There is a database which includes much more vendors. And then we made a selection, okay, what makes sense to include vendor A, B, and C for category ADC or category SASE and CASB, whatever it is. And that sort of definition is sometimes based on, hey, visibility of the vendors, but also based on, is there, for instance, like a Gartner or IDC or Forrester or other like content available that sort of highlights these vendors, or what are the major vendors to incorporate? That's like the main topic here. And that's what we tried. I'm sure we didn't succeed for 100% sure. It is work in progress. There might be new vendors, there might be name changes, there are mergers and acquisitions, or there also might be, hey, Ruben didn't see it. Also fine. So it's work in progress. If there's something missing or needs to be changed, feel free to reach out. It's a work in progress document. Alrighty. So that's the EUC Hexagrid. End user computing in the middle, 6 sort of pillars, which explains more from a functional perspective what EUC is all about. And then if you go to the colored, like 6 items here, these are the main pillars. And there are 26 sub-pillars, like VDI, like DAS service provider, or user environment management. These are like the sub-pillars. And there are more than 220 vendors listed in this Hexagrid. That's like the summary of that. Now let's go into each individual pillar, and we'll do that for 6 of them. These are also listed in a whitepaper. So if you've seen the whitepaper, this is all, I would say, hey, I've seen this before, all good. But I know for sure that many also didn't see the whitepaper and thought, hey, EUC Hexagrid is the infographic, which is partly true. The other part is the whitepaper. And it's good to use each pillar to explore what it means briefly, and then go a little bit deeper, like, hey, what are the developments for each pillar? And access is a good one. So access, in my point of view or my context, is okay. How do I access my end user computing environment? And that could be, how do I access, for instance, Zoom, or how do I access my SaaS apps, or how do I access my virtual applications and desktops? That means there's hardware, there's an OS, there's maybe specifically designed and purposely crafted hardware, all part of access as well. Part of access is also like spatial computing. I'm using like Apple Vision Pro to access applications which are running on the Apple Vision Pro, or applications which are running through the Apple Vision Pro in a virtual environment. Still valid. Unified workspace means there is a user interface which often combines modern identity with modern applications like SaaS and web applications, and maybe traditional Windows applications in a sort of smart way. Smart way could be like a smart icon, for instance, what Liquid and also what Apps Anywhere are doing. And that smart icon is able to sort of sense, hey, this end user device is not running Windows, but the application she or he requested is Windows. Let's use a virtual application or virtual desktop delivery platform to access these applications. And the unified workspace is sort of an integrated interface to support that user experience. The enterprise browser could be Edge or Chrome, but there are also specific vendors like Island and Talon, which is being acquired by Palo Alto, that brings sort of which secures the local browser, let's call it like that, and brings SaaS apps with maybe DLP or other security mechanisms in place to provide secure access to web, SaaS, and potentially also virtual apps and desktops from that secure enterprise local browsers. I should highlight local, because there are also solutions which provide remote browser isolation, which means, okay, I'm running a browser in my virtual environment through VDI or DAS, through virtual applications and desktops. And that browser is sort of the jump board to other web and SaaS applications. So remote browser isolation, so RBA, is not the same as enterprise browser. The key difference is, there are multiple differences, but the key difference is that the enterprise browser here is running locally on the endpoint device and provides access to SaaS, web, virtual Windows apps. That's like the key difference here. Alrighty, so what are, I would say, key developments here? So if I just think out loud, looking at time as well, a couple of items to highlight. So one of them is endpoint OS and hardware. AI is being added as sort of companion to the Windows OS and other OSs for sure as well, which also means hardware support for the natural language processor unit or an NVIDIA or AMD graphical processor unit to support this type of AI offloading to the physical device or potentially virtual environment as well. Another angle could be like inferencing, which tied to AI at the edge. So running on that machine, maybe creating a private AI where the large language model is able to just use local data, local on the machine or local in the network, and work in that particular area. Also, from a thin client OS perspective, I would say from a VDI 1.0, a sort of jump board, which is being used by, I would say, all thin client or the majority of thin client OS vendors born in the Citrix and VMware and Microsoft sort of virtualization era. But more and more thin client OS vendors are also changing and pivoting to a modern OS with modern IDP integration, modern identity provider integration, modern management integration, often their own sort of management solution, which often is SaaS-based, sort of you consume it as a service. And that sort of modern OS is able to access, yes, classic VDI 1.0, but also modern desktop as a service, cloud PC, which we'll also talk about later, but also SaaS and web applications. So instead of a more sort of strict, okay, let's focus on thin client OS to access virtual desktops, it is sort of becoming like maybe the new OS, like Chrome OS is a modern approach, or Windows 11 or upcoming versions of Windows are like have a different approach with modern management, modern application access, and so on and so on and so on. From a new Windows OS perspective, the interesting sort of number is that there are 400 million devices sort of at risk because they don't support like the upcoming new hardware requirements, which is also a great opportunity for like the thin client OS vendors, like Agile or Unicorn or Stardesk or Tenzik, like these type of vendors who are able to support that type of challenge, or even like Chrome with Chrome OS Flex to reuse and repurpose the hardware and run a modern Linux OS in that particular environment. Spatial computing fits here. It's still a niche for specific use cases like training or entertainment. I just read early this morning that Apple is trimming down sort of production capacity for the Vision Pro. And also Meta is sort of opening up their OS so that others can use it. So yeah, interesting development in that space. Also interesting development is sort of the enterprise local browser, as I mentioned. It's a quite hot market, fits in sort of the security space a lot, has quite some venture capital investment. If you look at Island and Talon as an example, but also I would say massively challenged by Google and Google Chrome Enterprise. Yeah, interesting space to watch it. I already mentioned remote browser isolation, so yeah, nothing to highlight specifically there. I think you can hear it, just double checking. I think Mary can relate to that. Well, good, thumbs up. And that's what you see here. A community friend, Thomas Poppelgaard, did use his access device, in this example, Apple Vision Pro, which is running like Vision OS, like Apple OS on the device, using a browser on the device to access, in this example, 3 different virtual desktop environments, running high-end graphics, resource-intensive applications, all through a browser. And that's another like simple example to use modern, I would say modern access devices with maybe classic, what people call legacy, I call it classic Windows applications. So yeah, interesting video. Just wanna highlight that one particular here. Alrighty, so the second pillar is all about virtual apps and desktops, and you can see there is differentiation between VDI, DAS, DAS service provider, DAS cloud PC, DAS others, and desktop hypervisor. Some people ask here, why did you differentiate between like these items? Isn't it all the same? Well, if you're at the moon and you look at Earth, then everything looks the same for sure. But if you're standing on feet here in the Netherlands, then hey, and you look a little bit in more detail, then yeah, you see details, and it's also important to highlight these details. And I don't have the time to go extreme deep and explain the nitty-gritty details, but I would say in essence, VDI equals software to run virtual applications and desktops. That can be single user, multi-user, doesn't matter for the conversation. VDI equals software. So you need people with skills to design, to implement, to update and maintain and support that software sort of infrastructure. And that software infrastructure is responsible to deliver virtual applications and desktops. If you don't want to be the ninja to make that all happen, and you just want to consume that as a service, that's what desktop as a service in essence is. It's the sort of control plane. It's operated by DAS service providers like Dizzion, like Microsoft, like VMware, like Citrix, like Worksport, like AWS, as you can see here. So they provide a control plane, a service. Some of them have that control plane and only support like public cloud, like Azure or AWS, while others are able to support multiple public clouds and or multiple public clouds or on-prem, depending on which vendor you're using. but the service is the key differentiator here. So software versus service. Now you could say, okay, what is DaaS service provider? These are vendors who also add managed services on top of the sort of DaaS, desktop as a service offering I mentioned in the beginning. So managed service could be like workspace services, or maybe infrastructure services, or migration services, or like other services which are added to, to like the engine, the DaaS engine, you could say. Then DaaS Cloud PC. In theory, it could fit also in like the DaaS bucket, but I think it's worthwhile to highlight Cloud PC specifically, and Microsoft is sort of has created that category specifically. And I did sort of use it as well because it makes sense to highlight Cloud PC as a separate category, because it also includes sort of workspace services and infrastructure services, and these are bundled and sort of sold through Microsoft Windows 365 Cloud PC, or like Dizzion or Citrix. They have services which combines these sort of infrastructure and DaaS services. And at the end, you will have sort of one SKU, and that one SKU provides access to like the full Windows environment, including infrastructure for running the workload machine, and also, I would say, tools or services and tools to handle the application sort of injection into that into the environment. Then you have DaaS Others, and DaaS Others are tools or platforms that sort of enable, automate, orchestrate, deploy like the DaaS offering. You can see like Amazon Workspace as Core is an infrastructure where DaaS vendors can leverage the infrastructure, while LeoStream is a broker, while Nerdio is sort of an automation and orchestration platform framework specifically tied to MSP/AVD and Microsoft technology in general to sort of automate and orchestrate. Sometimes people think, hey, Nerdio is equals DaaS. Well, no. Nerdio is a tool to support DaaS and fill in gaps other DaaS vendors left behind. So that's a differentiator as well. And then a complete different animal in this zoo is the desktop hypervisor. And that means there's a virtual machine running on your local physical endpoint. That VM can be used for developers to have multiple environments, can be used from a security perspective, different use cases. Microsoft with Hyper-V is an example, but also Parallels and VMware Workstation and VMware Fusion and Oracle VirtualBox are examples I think many know or have heard of in the past, or maybe use like I use as well on a daily basis. So what is happening in this particular space? A big change is happening on the Citrix and the VMware front. I would say VMware EUC equals Omnisia, like the new name. Broadcom did acquire VMware. That included VMware EUC, and that spin out is happening. And that also means refocus both on the Citrix side and on the VMware side, which impacts customers and partners in general. Like what I see in the field is that top 1,000, top 2,000, top 3,000 customers have direct touch. The rest is partners. And like last week, I was in the US at EUC Unplugged. I see, and when I speak to customers, many feel sort of left behind. Price increase, getting quotas takes 2 or 3 months because no colleagues left or not interested. This is happening in our space right now. And this is creating a massive void. That's also an opportunity. A massive void on one side is pain, but also on the other side is opportunity for Microsoft, but Dizzion and WorkSpot and others in the modern DaaS solution space, when others like Citrix and VMware are sort of changing, pivoting, refocusing, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, opportunity as well. Also opportunity in that space is for modern PC. So modern PC, what I mean with that, hey, why not use Windows 11 with Intune, or use Chromebook and Chrome OS and Google Enterprise as management platform. So that's also, I would say, yeah, happening in that particular space.
Ruben, there was a question. Someone was asking why we're not including Workspace Core and not just workspaces. They said it sounds like an omission, and I don't know what the reason was behind separating the two.
Yeah, because Workspace as Core as a name is a good question. I also received that question in the past, and we differentiate between Workspace as Core and workspaces. So Workspace as Core is the core sort of infrastructure where end user computing vendors are are using that infrastructure. So it does not include a broker. It does not include a remoting protocol, which are key elements in the DaaS solution itself. So it's not a full DaaS solution, Workspace as core specifically, while Workspaces, Amazon Workspaces is a full DaaS solution, which includes the broker, which includes the remoting protocol, and so on. So it's like a building block, which fits in the DaaS space for sure. Building block Citrix and VMware, and I think also WorkSpot is are using. But it also means that Citrix and VMware EUC, Omnisia and WorkSpot, they add their value on top of Workspace as core. And that's why I differentiate between Workspace as core and non-Workspace as core. Hopefully that addresses the question.
Hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks. Good question. Thanks for asking. I would say the bigger challenge, as I mentioned, the refocus on the Citrix and VMware EUC side is also the question I see in the field from customers and partners. Can I trust the vendor? Can I do business with them? How is support handled? So all non-technical questions. So the technology is still the same. And very often technology is very solid as well. Nothing wrong with that. It's more like the business angle, which is sort of challenging and sort of changing in that particular space. Also changing in this particular space is the migration from sort of VDI, from software to service, from VDI to DaaS. And Gartner mentioned something along the lines like, hey, in 2026, 80% of desktop as a service organization purchase will be vendor assembled or vendor managed. And that's like the angle I took with like the desktop as a service approach as well, comparing to, I would say, roughly 20% in 2023. So the growth in desktop as a service is there. And overall, the whole industry of desktop virtualization is growing as well. And also the role of the service provider becomes more important, since often it's also tough to find and keep skilled people who really understand and are able to operate sort of desktop as a service. And whatever your definition or your sort of end solution will be, it's not always easy to find and keep the right colleagues. Yeah, I already mentioned Cloud PC. Let's see, anything else to highlight here?
I think we're good to move on to pillar 3, Ruben.
Yep, we've like 15 minutes left, so
yep,
good to go to pillar 3 as well. Device and operating system management. This is where I made a joke. Hey, sometimes I'm sort of restricted by the amount of text I could use in a Hexagrid. That also applies here, because I would love to say like device, user, environment, and operating system management. That would be like a more accurate term. So that's why I'm using that term here right now. Because if you look at digital employee experience, DEX, a very hot topic these days, monitoring, observability, auto remediation, these are all part of like DEX. Unified endpoint management, some people call it UAM, whatever you want to call it, unified endpoint management. How do I manage my PCs, my mobile devices from a device and maybe from an application perspective? Another sort of UEM terminology could be user environment management. You can also see we don't use the UEM terminology here, not to confuse people. So user environment management are all the tools to manage the Windows user environment. So Windows user profiles, but also access to applications, the configuration of drive mappings or MAPI profiles or printers, like all these items combined is what user environment management encompasses. While some of the vendors, and Microsoft with FSLogix is a good example, are listed as a vendor in the UEM space, but if you look at it from a sort of more technical perspective, they are just with air quotes, doing user profile containerization. So there's no real management into that piece, or not as broad as I just explained, but well, it is still a valid solution which fits best in this category, hence the name and also the vendor listed here. So what is happening here? What are the developments here? I would say DEX is on fire. If you look at Control Up, if you look at EG Innovation, if you look at Citrix and the acquisition of Uber Agent, but also if you look at, I would say, more modern solutions like Control Up Real-Time, Control Up HDX, and also Liquidware Command Control. These are sort of solutions built or acquired / build, which focus on the physical endpoint. You just deploy the agent communicates with like the sort of control plane and the service, and then yeah, you're good to go. You don't need to set up a complete sort of monitoring infrastructure to make it all happen. So a new approach in the context of DEX, which not only applies to physical PCs, as I just mentioned, but also could apply and does apply to virtual environments as well. So deploy the Control SDX or the command control agent into your virtual persistent or non-persistent environment, and provide insights and monitoring capabilities of virtual and physical environments. So that's good stuff. So this DEX space, there are different definitions of it. Doesn't matter. It's a hot space. There's a lot of things happening in that space, and it's also a very valuable topic to further investigate if you're not investigating or didn't spend much time in that particular DEX space, because it ties directly to, hey, something is broken, and before the user sees it and report it, I would love to have technology in place which automatically repairs itself, or at least provides insights to the IT department. Hey, there's something wrong here. The user experience is not great. XYZ is happening, and that XYZ can be a million things. Hey, let's fix it before the user sees it. Yeah, one thing I would like to highlight here is on the user environment management side. As I mentioned, there's much more than Provo containers, like FSR6 is doing. Another one is the Ivanti workspace control, so REST software, which is end of life, which also is a void where others like Liquid and also Liquidware, two different companies, Liquid with a T and Liquidware, two different companies, as a massive opportunity for them to jump in and provide functionality with the solutions they offer. Security pillar here with endpoint analysis and protection. Some people might say, hey, that is just, well, antivirus solution or endpoint protection solution, but it's a little bit more. You can see also vendors like Device Trust being listed here, where they can do sort of contextual analysis of what's happening on the endpoint, and based on the outcome of that analysis, hey, shut down this connection to, for instance, Dizzion environment or Citrix environment or things like that. While on the identity and access management side, as you can see, these are like the modern identity providers like Entra ID, Azure AD, Google SAML, Ping Identity, Okta. These are like, let's say, the very known ones, but also classic Active Directory also fits in that bucket. I see a clear transition from like on-prem classic Active Directory to hybrid at least, or like full, hey, let's go full into modern identity management. Also in the security bucket, and it connects, I would say, connects also to the data center side of things or the services side of things. So, but I still believe it's valuable to add it into the context of end user computing, because if you look at the application delivery controllers, they tied into applications, and that could be virtual apps, but also in modern SaaS and web applications. Hence the addition to add ADCs here as well. If you look at Secure Access Service Edge and Cloud Access Security Broker, so SASE and CASB, they are also sort of networking equipment, or very often networking equipment or network services, and also tie into applications. So that's why both SASE and CASB are also included here. Pillar 5 is all about application compatibility, readiness, and management. So different buckets here. And yeah, you can see here, like, hey, I want to move from Win 10 to Win 11, or I want to move from on-prem to cloud, or I want to move from application container MSI format to MSIX, or from AppV to MSIX, or from MSE to MSIX, or whatever, or maybe from MSIX to Liquidware FlexApp, or to Citrix application layering, whatever the sort of combination is. And there are multiple angles, as you can already hear in my sort of rumbling about the packaging format. There are questions, will it work? And if it doesn't work, why doesn't it work? And that's where like the application compatibility and also repackaging fits in. Then on the application configuration and asset management side of things, okay, I want to use this application container format, and I want to push it to a device which is maybe classically managed or maybe modern management with SCCM/Intune as an example. And then I want to configure the application as well. And that's also where like Liquid kicks in. And more on the asset side of things, that's where like Nextthink is an important vendor in this particular space. And then you have application layering and streaming. I should say this is where application isolation, layering, and streaming cook in. So 3 different terms. Isolation is creating like a sort of container Layering is more like, hey, I have like a layered cake. I want to shovel in the layer into my Windows OS and deliver applications in that particular space. And streaming is more like the process. Okay, how do I get the bits from A to B, so that if it's being streamed, if it's being transferred from A to B, that the application which is running in a sort of container format can run on that particular device. So 3 different sort of terminologies: isolation, streaming, and layering, which have different sort of backgrounds and also different type of functionality. Too much to explain in more depth right now. And different vendors attached to that particular space. You have the sort of traditional vendors on the layering side. Maybe traditional is not the right term. You have vendors on the layering side like Citrix and VMware, but also Liquidware with FlexRed1. You have more like streaming vendors. Historically, like AppV is a good example, but also Numicent fits in that bucket. And you have like vendors like Microsoft with MSIX and also with AppV, but AppV is sort of end of life in 2026, but vendors in that particular space. Well, so what's happening here from a development perspective? I already mentioned it while talking through it is AppV to MSIX. MSIX is, I would say, the new big thing also from a Microsoft perspective. Containerizing applications, sort of a mixture of MSI and AppV. AppV is sort of isolating the application, creating an application container. That's happening big time. MSI app attach is happening, which is sort of attaching the MSIX at sort of user start session or VM boot time. What else is happening on that side is sort of I would say, slow migration or slow transition from, I would say, SCCM, which is like the big gorilla in that space, to more like modern management, which could be like VMware Workspace ONE, AirQuote AirWatch type solution, or Intune is also what's happening here. And also like the application streaming and isolation space. So I mentioned earlier, there's an end of life in April 2026. But still the AppV client is also part of the Windows OS, and that's sort of supported until October 2031, top of my head. So interesting space. If you look at MSIX app attach, but also Liquidware with FlexRed1, Numicent I mentioned. Yeah, interesting space to look at. One of the questions in a large community survey, which I will briefly explain in a couple of slides from now, is, hey, are you using application layering, isolation, or streaming? It's one of the, I think, 30 questions we ask in the past 7 years. And it's good to see, hey, what the response rate is. And in the past, it was like massively AppV being used big time. But the biggest sort of competitor is in that particular space is, no, I don't use anything of this. I just install my apps manually or automated through SCCM or Intune or something like that into my environment. So sometimes you feel that there's a massive war among these vendors, but the biggest chunk percentage-wise is where people don't use these type of solutions. So there's also some evangelization needed to explain the value of app layering, isolation, and streaming. Final pillar here is collaboration and applications. Again, it's more than just collaboration and applications. You can see cloud storage, which is an application for sure, but has a specific sort of angle. Cloud storage like OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, Google Drive. They have apps, the apps we use on a daily basis. You have peripherals, devices we use on a daily basis. And then you also have unified communications and collaboration. Of course, you have Teams and you have Zoom, you have Slack, you have like voice and contact center type solutions like Avaya as an example, but also other type of collaboration like NVIDIA Omniverse. And if NVIDIA Omniverse is brand new, just take a quick look. In essence, it's like a very modern approach of the design industry. Let's call it like that. It could be designing, hey, how can we work together to design a new movie, or how can we work together to design a new airplane, or to design a new door of an airplane if that is required. Right? Whatever is required, work together in a modern fashion with different type of applications and a sort of common data set is what NVIDIA Omniverse is doing. And I did highlight this one here because everyone knows Teams and Zoom and so on, but it's also good to take a look, hey, what else is happening in this particular space? Talking about what's happening in this space, I made some notes here, like cloud storage, check, given, all good. Apps, yep, given, we just consume what is new and what is helpful. And what I see what's new and helpful is like Gen AI companion tools. Copilot, Microsoft is using that term. I like the term itself. Companion also fits really well in that space. So tools to make life easier, to get work done or to get work done easier. And I will quickly explain in a video a little bit, one slide later, what it means. Peripherals also given for me, using Stream Deck, key lights, special mouse, multiple screens, multiple monitors, mobile, spatial, check. Yeah, fits for me in my use case. It's a hot space, hot market. It's sometimes tied to consumer as well, and consumer and business are sort of merging, integrating. So what is happening on the consumer side, also good to keep that in mind, because at the end it will end up in sort of the business side of end user computing for sure. I just want to give you a quick sort of hint to. I'll just play the video and then I'll explain what it is, and then see if you can laugh about it as well. Let me just play the video quickly. Not sure if audio volume is high enough. Is it good, Mary? Okay. This quick video will showcase Frame using the latest Azure instance, the NG-ADS V620, with a powerful AMD V620 GPU. You might scratch your head, okay, why is he playing this video? But
we will use
stay tuned.
3 instances, run 5
give it
architecture,
a half minute or something
construction,
like
and design
that.
applications at full HD and 4K resolution, and use the Frame Remoting Protocol, FRP, in different networking configurations. Stay tuned to learn how Frame, Azure and AMD work so great together. I'm Ruben, Field CTO, and I'm going to show you how Frame makes desktop as a service simple. The Azure NG-ADS V620.
All right, let me just continue.
Powerful AMD V620
looking at time as
GPU
well. So
with a maximum.
now you might ask, hey, why is this? Why did you play that video? Remember when I talk about applications and modern applications and so on? What you saw right now is not me. Like what you saw is the digital twin of Ruben. That's what you saw. And I'm using tools and platforms to sort of clone myself. And then just by prompting that, like the digital twin Ruben, say the things you just saw. So what you saw in action in that video is generative AI. And it's really tough to see. There are differences. If you know it right now, you might see the differences for sure. But it's almost scary close to the real me. When I recorded the first versions of this type of video and I shared with my wife and 10 friends among myself, they did not see the difference between like the digital twin and the real Ruben. So yeah, it's scary, but that's also with like these technologies. It's like fire. You can warm yourself with it and benefit from it, but you can also burn your butt from it. And that is like always a thin line with new technology. We'll see where it will end when you look at generative AI. But for me right now, these are tools in the EUC toolbox to make life easier. It will save time to build videos like this. The videos are still valuable. I truly believe that. But it makes it easier to create these videos. Instead of like 6 hours or 7 hours building the video, this takes 3 hours or 4 hours. So it's still time, but in the same amount of time, I can create maybe 1.5 video or 2 videos. So that's a simple example of that. And there are more examples of that on our YouTube channel. This is like season 1, episode 16, top of my head, what I just saw. Yeah, it is. There is more. So yeah, good stuff to watch if you're into the Dizzion frame context. And there are also other videos in the Dizzion context, all available at the Dizzion YouTube channel.
Also, feel free to judge our unofficial Rubot. That's what we've been calling it.
Yeah, Rubot, exactly.
He works for good at the moment. He hasn't been flipped over.
He is not evil.
No Skynet in this facility.
Exactly. So yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Good question. What do you think about these developments as well? Final thoughts and wrap up here, right? So
definitely feel free, if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to throw it in our Q&A section. We'll be here for the next few minutes to answer any of those. And then Ruben, if you want to flip over to the next slide, we do have Daz Like a Pro is a community survey Ruben put together with a couple of his other colleagues. Not owned by Dizzion. It's an independent survey. It's just more for the community to contribute and have a conversation about what's going on in their space. It's like I think it takes like 5 minutes to do. It was pretty straightforward. So,
Yep.
but yeah, looking
Yeah,
forward
provides
to
great insights.
seeing.
We run this survey for the past 7 years. So the end result is a report. If you fill in the survey and leave your email address behind, you will get the survey report. Or if you don't leave your email address behind, no issue either. You can download the survey report for free. And it's just, I would say, 25 questions. What is happening in the EUC space, and it's particularly your environment. And last year we had 600 something, or maybe close to 700 people who fill in the survey. So it provides awesome insights. Hey, how is being used? What is being used? What is working? What is not working? What are the future developments? All these questions are addressed in this year's survey. Good.
Awesome.
Let's see if there's anything else.
I haven't seen any other questions come in. So someone say they couldn't hear the audio. So apologies for that. We could definitely, we'll have this deck after the fact. So that way you guys could watch those videos and look at everything and judge for yourselves the generative AI skills.
Or if you go to like the Dizzion, you just go to YouTube and type in Dizzion, as you can see here, subscribe Dizzion. You'll see a list, and then click on the video play list as well. You see season 1, episode 16. That's the one I'm using for this one, but there are more which are similar. I see one question as well popping up. Hey, the vendor I'm using is not listed in the Hexagrid. Why is that? Well, there can be multiple reasons. Maybe I'm not aware of the vendor. That could be a reason. So it could be me. Maybe I am aware of the vendor and it's listed in the database, as I mentioned in the beginning. But maybe the vendor of the product is like very regional or maybe small. And we need to make decisions. Hey, not everything fits in that Hexagrid. That's also where Mary and colleagues kick in, like, hey, to make it still sort of readable or watchable, whatever you want to call it, we need to make decisions. So that's another reason. But I know for sure in the database maybe is, I would say, 40% bigger than what you see in the physical infographic itself. But if you believe if that something is missing, feel free to reach out. Happy to have a conversation. For sure, there will be things which I didn't see. So happy to know and also work on a new version. We'll see. Half year from now, we'll see. We didn't talk about that time frame yet, but yeah, there will be a new version for sure.
2025 is what we do have one final question. Someone asked, what is your vision on the portal way of working? VMware and Citrix have burned themselves on this topic.
Yep.
So if you want to dive into that just for a quick minute.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good question. There are multiple answers to that. On one side, I see in the field that the portal way of working works. I see that, for instance, in education, working closely with like Liquid and Apps Anywhere, they have sort of their workspace with these smart icons to provide students access to apps. And apps can be, quote, everything, SaaS, web, classic Windows apps through local installation or through Citrix or Dizzion, doesn't matter. So in that context, it works. But I also see the sort of flip side of it is that, hey, I don't want to be sort of forced into that workspace. I want to use my own workspace. And my own workspace, between air quotes, could be, well, maybe you have a student learning system, or maybe you have an other sort of interface, which also can be the Windows Start menu, or your Google Shelf, or your Apple Dock. That is also the interface. So I like the flexibility to decide to use the technology and connect the technology to what makes sense for the end customer or end customer organization. And the question was, okay, you mentioned something like, hey, Citrix and VMware burned their butt because they forced customers to use their interface. I think that's where the challenge fits. If you're forced and sort of into their interface, then this challenge might appear. On the other side, if you have an interface, but you're not forced to use an interface, you can also use an easy method to extract, for instance, a launch link. And the launch link can be embedded into any interface, maybe a student learning system, or your start menu, or your shelf, or whatever the interface is. And that launch link is doing one thing. It launches the app. That could be a Windows app or a SaaS app or a web application. That's a different approach, an approach many of the sort of traditional VDI vendors don't have. That's not their approach. They have a different view. Also fine, but there's a different view. Yeah, that's where often the challenge arises. If you're forced into their interface and you don't want to use their interface, you want to use your own interface, because maybe 90% of the time you spend in another interface, and occasionally you want to use an app or a couple of apps through that interface, and that's it. Yeah, that's often where this challenge arises, is what I see.
So pretty much people looking,
the
flexibility, as I was going to say, I was like, it just sounds like kind of like the EUC as a whole is being able to be flexible and be able to layer on all these applications and programs, and
instead of being forced.
Forced. No one wants to be forced. Everyone gets mad at that type of stuff, which is understandable.
There's a thin line between, hey, if everything is open and free and flower power and everything is possible, that is also has a downside. So
security risk and that kind of stuff gets involved. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So if you can find a thin line, hey, it's flexible but still secure. It's still easy to manage from an admin perspective. There are tools who can do that, I know for sure. Yeah, that's sort of the thin line, but it's different than other vendors are providing often.
Well, we're at time. So thank you, Ruben, for presenting today. It's always great to chat about all this stuff. Thank you for everyone who attended. We'll be sending this deck and a recording after the fact, so you're free to look at it at your own time. You can even decide, are we real? Is Ruben Rubot right now?
Yeah, I'm real. I can pinch myself. No worries.
We've trained the AI to pinch themselves. Doesn't count. Sure. But yes, thank you, everybody. Looking forward to seeing everyone in the next one. Hopefully we'll see even more changes with the Hexagrid. Love to see it out in the wild, and have a good day.
Thanks. Have a good day. See you next time.